Fellow Toastmasters, today I'm going to tell you what I've learned in about 100 speeches and by serving in various Toastmasters officer roles. 4 things capture what I've learned, and let me begin with number 1. Number 1 is listen to feedback. You get great feedback when you give a speech. For me, the best feedback was slow down. The first speeches I gave, it was like I was playing a piano, and I was playing as fast as I can, and I was missing notes, and I was never taking a rest, no rest notes. People couldn't understand what I was trying to accomplish. If I slow down, if I have about 3 main points, people can figure out what I'm trying to say. I'm effective at communicating. It's tempting to try to jam everything you know into a presentation. But it's much more practical, much more effective, rather than talking about all your raw data, if you just talk about a few main conclusions. Next point, number 2. It's really helpful for me to avoid technology. Does technology make a speech better? I've seen examples where it does. More often than not, it's distracting though. I was an area director, and I'd go to corporate clubs where there were PowerPoint speeches, and oftentimes it was people reading the PowerPoints, it was people showing great pictures. In terms of the interaction with the audience, in terms of the true communication, wasn't much of that. The other thing is that technology often goes wrong. I gave a long speech, a 20 to 30 minute speech that involved PowerPoint slides. I brought my computer, I pressed the F4 button, my cursor went away, I couldn't find it for 2 weeks. Couldn't give those PowerPoint slides Toastmasters wanted me to give. I was able to write what they said on boards, and I got by just fine without the PowerPoint slides. But there's just so much that can go wrong with technology. If possible, avoid it. If you can't avoid it, at least have a backup plan. Third, for me it's really helpful to get there early. At Eloquent Engineers meetings, I'm pretty comfortable. But still, if the room is set up and I have a time to pause and breathe a little bit before I speak, I'm much better. If I'm somewhere where I haven't spoken before, getting the layout of the room, trying to figure out where people might be sitting, trying to figure out who I want to look at or where I want to look, where I want to stand, where I might want to walk, all of those things really helpful. Getting to a location early is super important for me if I want to avoid being nervous. Finally, for large presentations for a lot of people, more important presentations, it's really helpful for me if I give it some extra thought. And by that I mean maybe giving a few presentations ahead of time to help me figure out how to do it best. I've given at least 3 presentations that were more or less an hour, and then I had one that was 2.5 hours. I gave one on how to do a podcast. For that one, I went through 5 humorous speeches about radio and podcasting, and by doing those, I was really comfortable when it came time to give my 45-minute how to give a podcast presentation at the Toastmasters Leadership Institute meeting. For the 2.5-hour Improving Your Management Skills seminar, it was really helpful to do a few half-hour seminars on topics within that presentation. It was also helpful to give just a 5 to 7 minute speech that served as an intro before that presentation. 2.5 hours is exhausting. And if you're prepared, if you've already said what you're going to say at least once, you've thought things through, so much smoother. I'm not sure how I would have gotten through 2.5 hours if I hadn't have given some of that material ahead of time. To conclude, there's 4 points that help me. The first one for me is slow down and listen to your Toastmaster feedback, whatever your Toastmaster feedback may be. Second one for me is avoid technology. Thirdly, get there early. And 4, for a major presentation, do lots of preparation to help, again, with nervousness. Giving a speech isn't really so much of an academic exercise or a cerebral exercise. Giving a speech is exercise. There should be an Olympics of public speaking, not a world championship of public speaking. That's why it's so important to do it often. I've been giving a speech for about once a month for the last 8 years. If I were to stop, you would notice right away that my speaking isn't as good as what you expect of me. It's exercising muscles, and I encourage you to continue practicing your speeches, continue giving speeches, and that's the most important thing you can do to be an effective speaker. Mr. Toastmaster.